My name is Donovan. Today I'm here to introduce a style project that I've been working on, which is an AI-powered MYGA Renewal rate setting exercise. It's an automation framework that transforms days-long manual actuarial process into a repeatable, governed 10-minute workflow there. So, very first question, what is a renewal rate setting for MYGA policies? Now, MYGA stands for multi-year guaranteed annuities. It is a type of products that has the rates locked for first a few years, then subject to renewal, decision made by insurance companies. Why is that important? The renewal rate settings determines the credit rate offered to policyholders after surrender charge expires, which can directly affect the lapse behaviors of your enforced policies as well as the spread being realized there. The quick way to think about this is that higher renewal rate will allow for lower lapses. It's a stronger liability retention, but it's a narrow spread as MYGA products. The spread logic is just the net asset earn rate, less the liability crediting. The lower renewal rate maximizes the spread, but it accelerates the lapse, accelerates the enforced runoff, which may even affect long-term profitabilities. So that's why the renewal rate settings is so much important in managing the enforce of annuity products. Historically, there have been a few challenges in this process. With a lot of companies exercise, this is still a manual Excel-based engine, a process. It is operationally heavy in the sense that we often rely on junior actuaries with multiple layers of senior reviews and sign-offs to complete it. The turnaround is slow because every time when renewal rates is set, they runs through a series of a manual or human labor intensive process there. The last part is institutional knowledge risk. It is not too surprising to many of us that even though with the process being documented for renewal rate changes, the knowledge, the rationale behind how decisions are made was almost never being fully documented rather than being taught. With all those challenges being in mind, how would AI-enabled automation address the challenge? Well, first of all, it's going to be a fully automated process that's going to run in 10 minutes from end to end. It extensively reduces the manual labor, allows senior actuaries to focus on judgments, not data wrangling. There's improved reproducibilities. Imagine in a time where rates are volatile, renewal rate changes might need to be made on a much frequent basis. Being able to have a process that gives you the answers, the data you need in 10 minutes allows you to make decisions much faster and react to the market more nimbly. So with that being said, we'll kind of talk through the three-stage automation workflows. The first part of it is data consolidation, which is really grabbing all those different informations we need to do renewal rate settings. For example, the policies that are subject to renewal in force data, the assets yield for different cohorts of business, the spread sensitivities, targeted spread sensitivities, etc. Pricing matrix. Once you have all those informations, those being dumped into what we call renewal rate age engine. It could be a Excel model or it could be a Python based model. And what it does, it's going to consume all these informations and produce a set of renewal rates for all those policies that are subject to renewal based on the profit, the risk profiles, the risk appetite we have. The last step is post-processing, which is when we have the updated risk renewal, how do we upload it to different systems, as well as how is the email communication being drafted, how is the memo being drafted. So now I'm going to switch to the actual project that I developed, go through a demo of the AI-powered workflow. without further ado, let's go ahead and start. So the AI tool that I'm using for today is called Claude Code. It is well integrated into this Visual Studio Code environment, so the users can directly interact with it. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to pretend it is my first time working with this project. Seeing all the folders on the left-hand side and all the code, I might have the questions of, well, what the project is about. So I'm just going to go ahead and ask that question. With the question being asked, Claude Code itself will skim through a few key documents. For example, the readme.markdown file, workflow markdown file, to being able to answer that question. Now, there we are. Well, this is an actuarial MYGA renewal rate setting agent, a tool for insurance actuaries to manage end-to-end process of setting renewal interest rate for annuity policies. It also lists out kind of what it does for 3 different steps and detailing the key architects there, including different Python agents, a Streamlit dashboard to show results. For someone like me who have built this, I know exactly that this tool has a embedded workflow that runs the process from end to end. So I'm just going to go ahead and kick off that process. Once I'm able to give the command to run the workflow, Claude Code will read that workflow.markdown file, which lists out exactly what that workflow would look like. We'll be asking the question of, well, what renewal cohorts we want to look at? We want to look at the policies that are subject to renewal in the second quarter of 2027. So I'm going to select 2027 here. It's going to ask the question, second question, which quarter? Let's do Q2 here real quick. Once Claude get these informations, it will be compile those to a configuration that is predefined in terms of its structure. We will have human to review the JSON format in person, just making sure the data in there is consistent with what we're looking for. In this case, it is. So we'll go ahead, confirm that, and go to the next step. So what the next step does is that it will start the Claude itself will start first making up those folders that stores different sources of information. For example, this command itself is to create the folder called outputs and config in this project itself. Once that is complete, it's going to get one of those agent to start running some of the process. One of the process is to make sure to document the configuration file they just proposed. And it will use this documented configuration file in JSON format to run a list of a Python code that's being used in the agents called data retrieval. But since we have already ran that process here, we can actually see there are 683 policies subject to renewal in Q2 2027. And the way to kind of quickly look at this is the policy data CSV in data folder is supposed to represent the entirety of policies. And we have 5,000 dummy policies that's created here. With this data retrieval process being completed, the policies that are subject to renewal will be stored in a different place. And in this file, we're only going to have 683 policies in total that have a renewal date that falls into Q2. We're also adding a few additional columns classifying the renewal cohort as well as shock period. All right, with that being done, it's going to ask, well, there's a dashboard to review the statistics. Do you want to do that? This is something that I've added to the entirety of the process so that the users can get visuals, or data insights based on this dashboard. Let's go ahead and say, okay, we're going to launch the dashboard. And it's going to give you a static dashboard websites here. And once you can do is you can copy paste this and put into your web browser. You'll be able to see kind of a summary of statistics, which is represented here. From a cohort view, we can actually see the account value of policies that are subject to renewal for different durations of products across different issue years. You can also look at the weighted credit rate there. We can also go to policy detail, look at the entirety of a policy that are subject to renewal. Now, obviously, if you're not familiar with that code environment, you can also click the download as CSV to download this information. So far, so good. Great. Now the first step is complete, which is getting the data that what we need, kind of capture the policy that is subject to renewal. Now we're going to start make rates renewal. So what I'm going to tell AI to do is, yes, let's move to the rates renewal. So are you ready to run the rate renewal process? Just to confirm one more time. Yes, let's proceed with the inputs check. So there's a validation process that's being set up to check if there is the inputs that's needed to run a rate renewal process. So it's going to run that input validation and start showing out the results there. So say check 1 and check 2 are passed. The inputs JSON does not exist. So now we're going to automatically generate a inputs that feeds into the rates renewal process. We'll talk about what's in that input in a minute. We have a specific schema defined for what the input should look like in the JSON format, as well as example. So for example, this is a sample input renewal could potentially look like. We have a renewal cohort, the renewal rate proposal name, as well as target spread for 3 different durations of product, and the maximum rate change for decrease and increase. Is there any retention override we want to do, and what does the retention override does? And is there any other override for specific cohorts of a product? Let's go ahead and do that for now. Go ahead, allow that to write that inputs out. Once I'm giving the command that is allowed, I'm allowing that to write it out, there's going to be a new file saved in here. Now we're going to rerun the validate process again. So all 3 checks have passed. Now this is what our current rate renewal inputs look like. Maybe this is not exactly what I want. Maybe I want to give them a different name called baseline instead of initial draft. Let's make that change. Yes, I want to make a change. Well, you can actually say, can you change the name of proposal to 01-baseline instead of the initial draft? Let's go ahead, send that in there. Now, Claude is going to make the edits of replacing that name with VS Code. You're able to see exact what's changed in this file. Let's go ahead, say yes to this. So now the input looks great. Okay, let's proceed as it is. Now what's going to happen is that the rate renewal process will take those inputs that's being fed in and run this entirety of code. Let's go ahead and run it now. And what it really does is just kind of running a list of Python code that serves for the purpose of the rate renewal model, instead of asking AI to do whatever he believes the rate renewal process should look like. And later I'll touch on why this is very important to use AI as the orchestrator rather than as AI to do every single thing. All right, now I have completed this baseline run. It's asking me if I want to define another renewal rate scenario to before compile. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. This is what we have for now for the baseline, but maybe I want to do something different. Maybe let's say we want to add a log for certain group of policies. Yeah, let's So now he's asking me, do you want to make changes to the new rate renewal inputs? I'm going to go ahead, click yes. So he's going to ask me, well, what changes do I want to make? Well, let's say I want to make a override to disable retention. Um, and name this as 02 retention off. Now, this is what I'm going to tell AI. Claude is going to take that as a natural language and being able to update your renewal rate input in JSON format. So what it's going to do is going to first rename it. Then it's going to turn off that enable button or option there. Okay, with these two things being done, the AI would come back and ask us, well, does this look good? Yes, now let's proceed it. So this time it's going to run the same rates renewal model or functions with the different sets of inputs. Once it's being able to run that, it's going to save the results in a separate folders in there. I have defined this project or clarified the schema and the process in a way that every time when we create a new rate renewal scenario or inputs, we will store those in those different proposals, their own folders. So you get a documentations of what the inputs being used. The outputs itself will be stored in the renewal outputs folder. So you get renewal rate proposal for different scenarios. Well, assuming this is what we have now, well, let's proceed to compile. So what this step does is that it's going to look at all the entirety list of renewal proposals you have, and then going to compile everything to a nice summary. So it's going to run the compile agent we have defined in there. Okay, once it is finished running, what we can do is we can look at the data in the dashboard again. Well, let's go ahead and move to the dashboard first to look at it before we start signing off anything. Kind of similar address there, so we're gonna take a look at it. We're just gonna go ahead and refresh this. Now what we're able to see is we have a new compare proposal tab. We're actually able to see that the current weighted average rate versus the weighted average rate in the baseline and the weighted average in the retention off. We do expect that with retention off being turned off, the rate is going to drop a little bit more significantly than the rates in the baseline. And a quick way to check this is that when we're looking at specific cohorts here, because this is only going to affect the policies that are in retention. So we're looking at policies that are issued in 2019, 2020 for 7-year policy that's coming out of renewal. So actually we can see here the baseline is slightly higher and everything else is the same. And then it's the 5-year policy for 2022, which we're also seeing here, the weighted average rate is lower than the baseline in the new proposal. You can also switch to a spread view, kind of looking at the overall spread. What does that look like for each of these proposals? And this project itself is defined on my experience working with risk renewal. That might be different measures you want to look at. For example, projected lapse, actual projected earnings captured in the next 2 years or whatever. Those are just additional measures you can continue to add to this project. Assuming this looks great, I'm gonna lean in towards the baseline one for now. I'm moving to the sign off stage. Yes, let's proceed to sign off. Okay, now it's going to kick up the third part of the workflow, which is gonna ask us to start to documenting the sign offs in a folder under the outputs. So it's going to grab information, say, hey, these are the tools that are available for sign off. Which one do you want to sign it off? Let's pick the first one, baseline, for now. Yep, we'll record that sign off. Again, all those questions are there because we have defined it in the workflow markdown file itself, so that when you interact with AI, it's going to go through all these needy steps to making sure there is governance and control in each of the step there. Great. Now we're making a directory called decisions in an outputs folder, and we're going to document this sign off JSON file here. Great. Once we have that, under the decisions, we have a JSON file documenting our sign off. And the next step is drafting a memo, right? We can start doing that. There is a specific markdown file in our docs kind of detailing what the email draft should look like, what a memo should look like for these type of exercise, and what are components to cover. So we'll go ahead, click proceed. What's going to happen is that it will start generating this new email, and that's being saved in the renewal outputs. Saved in the outputs folder here. Now we can actually look at the memo real quick. All right, so it's going to populate that information, but you can also just click on that and go ahead, do a open preview. So you're able to see this nice compiled format of it. You can also write this to a PDF if you want to. There's a PDF. Can't remember exactly the name of it, but there was a PDF functionality where you can directly do that. Markdown to PDF. Let me try that. Markdown to PDF. Well, I can't find it now, but anyway, there's a PDF converter where you can convert this markdown format to a nice PDF just as in the preview. And this is what that looks like. Okay. And after that point, you can directly copy paste this or send it to whoever is the ultimate sign off person on this project. And then you are good to go. Kind of going back to what we just talked about, the project itself that's being developed really adopts mindsets of having a flexible implementation architect. The AI orchestrator layer sits at the very top, controls each of the agents to complete each of the steps independently. And what's more important is each of the modules, the agents can be reconfigured, can be replaced independently. For example, in the demo itself, the data retrieval was using Python and the CSV, but in productions, this can be replaced with a Python querying process to Greenplum SQL servers or any enterprise data warehouse. The renewal rates engines is an interesting one. In the demo itself, we kind of use Python to draft it, some sort of logic there to set the renewal rates, but mostly at this point, this is assets owned by the Actuarial team and is currently in Excel. The production options is that either they can transform the logic into a to Python to integrate, or they can leverage existing technologies to get a much quicker speed to market. For example, Coherent Spark APIs is a solutions out there that can instantly transform Excel to an API solutions with the ability to kind of transform from Excel to API in a few minutes and connect to the first step and the latter step of this entire workflows. We're talking about a speed to market probably within month. The last part, within weeks or month. Last part, post-processing. In this demo, we use Markdown memos and JSON archives. There are many other workflows we can incorporate. For example, automated email communication system uploads, DocSign, etc., all tailored to what the governance requirement, internal governance requirements are. So with that being said, the framework itself really kind of can expand to all different scenarios there. But then with each of the components, the modules itself can be easily replaced or updated based on the tailored need of the company itself. Well, thank you again for being here, and we're almost at the end of this presentation. And at any point, if you have questions, feel free to reach out directly to this email address.